Welcome, everyone, to vpod.ai. If you're looking for a professional book review podcast like this, visit vpod.ai. Now, let's get into it. I was scrolling through social media this morning, and it just feels like we're living in a culture that is completely obsessed with natural talent.
Oh, 100%.
We see these child prodigies, the Mozarts, or you watch an athlete like Michael Jordan and you just think, well, they have it. They have the gift. I don't. It's really demoralizing.
It is. And that whole narrative does so much damage. It tells you that if you weren't born with it, you might as well not even try. It's this very rigid, fixed mindset.
Right.
But the question we have to ask is, what if that entire narrative is just wrong? What if we're measuring the wrong thing?
And that is the huge question we're tackling today. We are doing a deep dive into hidden potential, the science of achieving greater things by Adam Grant. And I want to be clear right off the bat, this isn't just another one of those hustle harder self-help books. We've all read them. This is, well, it's different.
It's a framework. And for context, Adam Grant isn't just a motivational speaker. He's an organizational psychologist at Wharton. He's bringing data to this. And his core idea is, well, it's all about redefining potential.
How so?
He argues that the true measure of your potential isn't the height of the peak you reach.
So not the gold medal or the CEO job.
Exactly. It's the distance traveled to get there. That's the phrase he uses.
That concept, distance traveled,
Yeah.
that's the anchor for the whole book, really. It's such a key distinction because we only ever see the result. We see the person on the podium.
We don't see where they started. So if someone starts with every disadvantage and gets to the same place as someone who started on third base, well, that person has shown way more potential.
It's about the slope of their growth curve, not just the end point.
Precisely. And to explain how we can, steepen that curve, Grant breaks it down into three main pillars, which we're going to explore. Skills of character, structures for motivation, and then systems of opportunity.
I love that. Moving from the internal out to the external. So let's start with that first one. Skills of character. Now, I think most people hear character and they think, being honest, having a moral compass.
Right.
But he's using a very specific definition here.
He is. He defines character as the capacity to prioritize your values over your instincts.
Your values over your instincts. So my instinct is to quit when it gets hard.
Exactly. And character is the skill that overrides that because you value growth more than comfort. And the first skill he brings up is this metaphor of being a sponge.
A sponge. Okay, but that feels a little cliche, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Soak up knowledge. We've heard that before.
It does on the surface, but Grant adds this critical distinction. He says it's not just about passive absorption. A real sponge just gets saturated, heavy, it leaks.
Right.
A true cognitive sponge is proactive. It's about absorption and filtration. It's knowing what to let in and what to keep out.
The filtration part is the trick. There's so much noise out there.
Yeah. And that's his point. He says high potential people are experts at asking for advice, not just feedback.
Wait, hold on. Advice versus feedback. What's the real difference there?
Well, feedback is usually backward looking. You did this wrong. It makes you defensive.
Puts your ego up, yeah.
But advice is forward looking. Next time, maybe try this. You inviting them to be a partner in your future success, not just a judge of your past failure. That's how a sponge filters for growth.
I love that. It turns critics into coaches. And that flows right into the next character scale, which is becoming a creature of discomfort. This is where my perfectionist brain just started screaming.
I think you and a lot of other people, we are wired to avoid discomfort. But Grant's point is that growth only happens when you're willing to feel awkward, genuinely foolish and incompetent.
And the story he uses for this is just, it's incredible. Sarah Maria Hasbun. She's a polyglot who learned 9 languages.
9, yeah, later in life, which is the key.
And you just assume she has the language gene.
That's the easy story, right? The natural talent myth.
But her process was actually painful. She had the courage to be, excruciatingly awkward. She just started speaking a new language immediately, way before she was ready, making all the mistakes.
That is the skill right there. She was willing to make more mistakes in a week than most people make in a year because she accelerated that feedback loop. She got used to that awkward feeling.
She realized the awkwardness wasn't a sign of failure. It was the sign of learning.
Which is terrifying for a perfectionist.
Absolutely, because if you pride yourself on being competent, looking incompetent is your worst nightmare.
It's paralyzing. And Grant really attacks perfectionism. He says it just leads to burnout and avoidance. You'll never start. So he suggests replacing it with imperfectionism.
Imperfectionism. That sounds a little like just settling for less.
It sounds like it, but it's more strategic. It's about aiming for excellence, but knowing when to say, this is good enough for now. He talks about setting minimum lovable goals.
Minimum lovable goals. That's such a great reframe. Like, don't write the perfect novel today, just write one page you don't hate.
Exactly. It's about consistency over intensity. It's better to do something imperfectly today than to wait to do it perfectly tomorrow. Because for the perfectionist, tomorrow never comes.
Okay, so that's the internal stuff.
Right.
But we don't operate in a vacuum. You need help. And this brings us to that second pillar, structures for motivation.
Right. And here he uses the metaphor of scaffolding. It's a brilliant image, really. You can't build a skyscraper by just jumping higher.
You need a support structure.
A temporary support structure, and that's the key word, temporary. Scaffolding could be a mentor, a routine, a support group. It's about acknowledging that willpower alone is never enough.
The story of the Golden 13 from the book is a perfect example of this. The first black officers in the U.S. Navy during World War II.
An incredible story. And you have to remember the context. This was the 1940s. The system was rigged for them to fail.
Absolutely. The pressure on them was insane. But they ended up with the highest collective grade point average in Navy history.
Higher than any white class before or after.
So how did they do it?
That's the lesson on scaffolding. They realized going it alone was a losing strategy, so they built their own structure, a tight-knit study group. But they didn't just study together, they taught each other.
The protege effect. The best way to learn is to teach.
Exactly. The math whiz taught physics. The navigation expert taught maps. They rallied around the weakest link. They created a collective intelligence.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
That's it right there. They are the perfect example of collective scaffolding, and that idea of structure also applies to how we practice. We've all heard of deliberate practice, the 10,000 hours grind.
Yeah, the grind.
It's effective, but it's a motivation killer. It leads to what he calls bore out.
Bore out. I like that.
So he introduces a counter idea, deliberate play.
Now, this isn't just goofing off, is it?
No, it's not just gamifying a boring task. It's about restructuring the practice itself so it's intrinsically engaging, blending discipline with play.
So instead of drilling scales on a piano until your fingers bleed,
maybe you try to learn a complex pop song that you actually love. You're still building the skill, but you're doing it in a way that keeps that fire alive. It turns the grind into a game.
Okay, so we have character and motivation, but there's a third piece. You can have all the grit in the world, but if the door is locked, you can't get in. So the third section, systems of opportunity.
This is where he shifts from the individual to the macro, to the gatekeepers. How do schools and companies find hidden potential? Because right now, the data shows we're really bad at it. We just look for pedigree.
He is not a fan of the resume. He basically argues it's just a map of your past privileges.
It is. It reflects where you started, not how far you've traveled. He says we need to move toward work sample tests.
Which just makes so much sense. Give them a task that's like the actual job. See how they think.
Exactly. You'll find the diamonds in the rough who got overlooked because their paper trail wasn't perfect.
And he applies this to education, too, with the Finnish school system.
Yeah, the Finland example is amazing because it's built on trusting in hidden potential. In the U.S., we track kids so early. Gifted or remedial.
Which is just devastating, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. But in Finland, there's no early tracking. And they use a practice called looping, where the same teacher stays with a class for multiple years.
Up to 6 years sometimes.
Imagine that. The teacher has time to really know every single child. They build a relationship, they can see the potential in the quiet kid, not just the one who raises their hand first. They're playing the long game.
A long game. That's really the theme. And speaking of which, we have to talk about Jose Hernandez. This is my favorite story in the whole book.
The astronaut. Yes. This is the emotional core of it all for me.
So Jose was a migrant farm worker. He grew up picking cucumbers, missing months of school every year, didn't learn fluent English till he was 12.
I mean, his starting line was miles behind everyone else's.
But he saw the moon landing on TV and decided, I want to be an astronaut. He worked his way through engineering school, applied to NASA, and got rejected. Applied again, rejected.
Well, that hurt to even imagine.
He was rejected 11 times.
11. Most people would quit after 2. They'd say, okay, message received.
But he became a sponge. He looked at who NASA was hiring. He saw they were pilots, so he learned to fly. They were scuba divers, so he got certified. They were working with Russia, so he learned Russian.
He was building his own scaffolding. He treated every rejection not as a stop sign, but as data.
And on the 12th try, at age 47, he was selected. That is the ultimate definition of distance traveled.
It just gives you chills. It proves that potential is not some fixed thing you're born with. It's something you build.
So the book is obviously inspiring, but we want to look at it critically. What are some of the valid criticisms?
Well, the praise is deserved. Grant is a master storyteller. It's incredibly accessible. But one common critique is that it does lean very heavily on pop science anecdotes.
A lot of sports analogies, yeah. Olympians, mountaineers.
Right. And for some readers, that can feel a bit cliche. They want more rigorous data, less survivor bias.
I can see that. Sometimes the extreme examples feel unrelatable, like great for the astronaut, but I just want a promotion.
Exactly. Another point is that if you're already deep in the growth mindset world, or you've read his other books like Thinkin', and again, some of these concepts might feel a bit redundant.
That's fair. It's more of a fantastic synthesis than a totally new discovery.
But for the average person just starting out, it's packaged brilliantly. I think it's primarily for the person who feels overlooked or stuck, but, it's also essential for the gatekeepers, the managers, parents, teachers.
Right. And I'd add it's for anyone with imposter syndrome. There's that great line, when people believe in you, it might be time to believe them.
That's a powerful thought. Sometimes the scaffolding is just borrowing someone else's belief in you for a while.
So as we wrap this up, what's the core philosophy here? Grant says something at the end that I think is perfect. He says, don't think about success as achieving your goals. Think about success as living your values.
It shifts everything to the process. If you value growth, then the struggle is the success. The climbing is the win. It takes the pressure off. It frees you.
It does. So here's our final thought for you to chew on. If you stopped worrying about how talented you are, if you just let that myth go completely and focused only on how willing you are to be uncomfortable, what project would you start tomorrow?
That's the question. What would you do if you weren't afraid of that awkward phase?
Embrace the awkward, folks. That's where the hidden potential is. Thanks for listening to this deep dive.
See you next time.